Assalamu alaikum. Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome you today and thank you for being with us for this important conversation that we would like to have today with our great speakers coming with, despite their extremely busy schedule, that they made time for us. We have been working on this event for a long time, and the biggest challenge was probably more than the rapprochement itself, is to find one day that works for everyone. But we are finally lucky, and we found a day that worked for everyone. And finally, we are thrilled to have you all here. And again, would like to thank our great speakers for their time and effort to have this and to be with us today and to share with us their insights and this conversation about a very important topic that's important for everyone. Important for the region, important for the neighbors, and most importantly, important for the different conflicts that we're having in the region and how this could be affected. As you probably know, if you watch the media and you read about this issue of Iran Gulf or Iran Saudi or Iran region, you will find a lot of accusations and blame and a lot of negativity, let me put it this way, in the media. We try to look or to take another or a different angle to this, which that we can focus on what is doable, on rapprochement, on what is possible in order to provide more of a better understanding between the neighbors and between the different players or the major players in the region. We're trying to provide or to advance a positive discussion, a positive debate, a constructive debate on what is possible given this complexity of the political situation that the region is having. We hear also about parties talking about the need to talk, but despite the talks, talking is not happening. So what is preventing talking, and what are the obstacles, and what are different approaches to advancing more of a better understanding and a rapprochement despite the political tension that has been prevailing in the past years. So today, again, I would like to thank and welcome our great speakers for being with us today and for sharing with us their insights. I would like to first to give each one of our speakers 5 minutes to talk about what is about rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, or actually it depends on the way you frame it or you define it. I don't have to define it for you because this is what we want to hear from you. Maybe it's about rapprochement between Iran and the Gulf, or Iran and the region, or what. So this is your thoughts, your ideas, to tell us your definition and your understanding of rapprochement with the goal of reaching better relations and solutions to the conflicts that the region is having these days. So I would like to begin with Jamal to tell us, is rapprochement between the neighbors is possible, and how? What would you like to see, or what's your definition of rapprochement, and what would you like to see happening in order to advance rapprochement? Everyone, many of you know Jamal very well. Jamal Khashoggi, he is the Director General Manager of the Arab News Channel. He has a long history with journalism. Many of you know his his history with journalism in Afghanistan, in Algeria, actually, also with covering the democratic change or transformation in Algeria, and also in the Iraq, the Kuwait also war that also Jamal covered for the region. So Jamal, I would like to give you the floor to share with us your insights on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Yes, in principle, we should be able to have rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Actually, we should. It is good for all of us. I will start with a point of optimism. The Saudi officials and the Iranians are talking now about arranging for the Iranians to perform their Umrah and their Hajj this year. So if things go well, we're going to see Iranian pilgrims in Mecca and Medina this Ramadan. If not, for sure, inshallah, there will be Iranian pilgrimage for Hajj. That shows that there is an interest between both countries to have an ordinary, neighborly, brotherly relations. I'm from Medina, and we in Medina, we like Iranians pilgrimage. They're good spenders, very much. Yes, we like that about them. But we don't like the politics of their government. But we keep each issue aside. When they come to Medina for Hajj, we don't discuss politics with them. And maybe they don't want to discuss politics with us in order for the Hajj to go peacefully. But the difference, as I said, it is in politics. So what is the difference in politics? In principle, there is no direct confrontation, territorial differences or disputes between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Not so ever. We don't claim any part of Iran, neither they claim any part of Saudi Arabia. Even in the oil field in the Gulf, the offshore oil fields, there is some probably misunderstanding about the Warda fields between Kuwait and Saudi Arabia and Iran, but it's not something serious. If it can be resolved easily in any form of legal attributions. So it's all about Iranians' expansionism, as it's seen by us. The Iranians have a different view of it. They see it as Iranians' interest to fight or to stand for the Israeli threat. That is their perception. We are not convinced of that perception. We do not see the Iranians present in Syria as legitimate, and we do not buy their argument that they are there to confront the Israelis. We see their presence there is just merely sectarianism, siding with the dictator for the wrong reasons. So those differences are the making of the dispute, the anger, the exchange that we have with the Iranians. It's all about Iranian expansionism. If the Iranians free themselves from this expansionism policy, I'm sure we will have an excellent relationship. We tried that. Saudi Arabia had an excellent relationship with the Islamic Republic of Iran under the Islamic Revolution in the time of Khomeini, in the time of Khatami, and the time of Rafsanjani. We had an excellent relationship in the 90s. It all fell to pieces when the Iranian appetite opened up to our region, and they start coming to Iraq, and then they come to Syria, and then to Yemen, and that's what Saudi Arabia at this mood of confrontation. Maybe we could blame the Americans who brought down the system in Iraq and give the Iraq on a golden plate, as Prince Saud al-Faisal, the late Saud al-Faisal, put it in New York when he said to the Americans, you handed Iraq in a golden plate to the Iranians. That opened the appetite of the Iranians, and they thought if they can take Iraq, why can't they take Syria? And if they take Syria, they will maintain Lebanon. And not only Syria, let's go to the south of Saudi Arabia and create a party there and a militia there that will take over the government, not wait for the political process to end in Yemen, but to hijack the political process and control Yemen as a de facto state. Of course, Saudi Arabia rejected that, and the storm of resolve started. That put an end. I'm sure the Iranians are not happy with what Saudi Arabia did, but most of the Muslims are happy with what Saudi Arabia did, and they liked, and Saudi Arabia became so popular throughout the Muslim world for what it did in Yemen. And most Muslims, they appreciate, they see Saudi Arabia today as the pole or the countering weight to Iranian expansionism. Let me just go briefly what the Iranians are doing in Syria. In Syria, they are siding with the dictator who is butchering his own people. And my Iranian friend admit that. But they have a different reasons. And maybe my friend Kazim, my friend Abbas will present their views, and they will give a different reasons why they are siding with the dictator. We see it as just a form of ta'ifiyya, of sectarianism. That's why they are siding with Bashar al-Assad, who has no future, and they need to answer the question not of the Saudi Arabian people, of the Syrian people, why you are sending your own militias and your own army and your own military equipment to kill us. A Syrian would be asking the Iranians that. In Lebanon, they blocked the election of a president. The situation in Lebanon is hijacked totally. Lebanon is not a free country now. The Lebanese themselves, whether they are Maronite or they are Sunnis, are not happy with the situation. And it just because of Hezbollah. The Iranians also tend to have a militia that is allied to them. The Turks don't have a militia in Saudi Arabia or in Iran or in Syria. The Egyptians don't have a militias. The Saudis don't have a militias. But the Iranians, they have a militias. Hassan Nasrallah swear allegiance to the government of Iran, to Al-Wali al-Faqih of Iran. In international politics, this doesn't work. It's not acceptable in international politics. In Bahrain, they even did a disservice to the Bahraini opposition. The Bahraini opposition received the best deal any opposition in the Gulf could have received from a Gulf country. But they raised the demand of the opposition, and they made the opposition lose the opportunity to have to take part in a democratic transformation of Bahrain. In Yemen, there was a political process in Yemen, and Yemen has been wanting to find a solution for their country since 1948, to find some kind of hukum rashid, some kind of a just government. And the revolution of 2011 could have led to that. But again, the Houthi, who are supported by the Iranians, hijacked the process. So what the Iranians are doing is not really helpful in the region. And we need to talk more about it. If the Iranians free themselves from that and indulge in economic building of their own country, I'm sure Saudi Arabia will be very much happy with that and will be even cooperating with them as much as we are cooperating with Turkey or cooperating with any other country in the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Sayyid Muhammad Kazim Sajadpour. He's a professor at the School of International Relations in Tehran. He's a former ambassador of the Islamic Republic of Iran to the United Nations. Dr. Sajadpour received his PhD in political science from George Washington University and was a postdoctoral fellow at Harvard. He has taught at Tehran University and Azad University and the Iran's National Defense University. Dr. Sajadpour, thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. First of all, let me thank you for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. And the subject that you have chosen also is very interesting, though it's very controversial. I think to start with, first of all, in your letter you referred to blame game, that we should not go to blame game. So I start by two basic assumptions. That first of all, blame game would not result to any rapprochement or understanding. And I try to refrain from that. Second working assumption would be that the existing situation between Iran and Saudi Arabia is not good. It's not good for both of these countries and for the region, and it should be changed to a better one. So based on these two working assumptions, in direct response to what you said and asked, how a rapprochement can be achieved, I have A, B, C, 3 points. A, assessments, B, about bridges, and C, about coexistence. I go briefly to each of them, and I try to be in my time frame. Assessments and analysis is the base of everything, and I think the analysis and assessment that we have from each other should be revisited and reconstructed. What I hear, what I read from my Arab colleagues or Saudi colleagues is that Iran is behind everything, that Iran is the source of any issue, any problem, and any, let's say, crisis in the region, and so on and so forth. I think this type of analysis is not helpful. Of course, you may have some on the other side who also have some type of similarities in analysis. What I read today is that Saudi Arabia has one single concept in its foreign policy, and that is to fight with Iran. So Iranianness has become the prism through which the Saudi Arabia is looking at the world. And I find my own personal analysis why. I try to answer, and I hope I'm corrected. I think there is one domestic reason for it, that there is a generational change. There are so many social challenges and cleavages inside the Saudi Arabia. There is democratic lack, democratic deficiency, institutional democratic deficiency, the issue of modernization versus tradition, the issue of terrorism, extremism, and so on and so forth. And also there is a fight inside different political elites. So if you focus on Iran, you can have a cohesive factor. So there is no base for what Iran is depicted as the source of everything, unless you have a type of concept or working concept you can cover the cleavages and differences inside your polity. On the regional level, there were many attempts from the beginning of the Iranian Revolution to contain the Islamic Republic of Iran, to really damage it, and not to start by Iran-Iraq war, but Iran-Iraq war, you have it supported by Saudi Arabia and other GCC members. They supported Iraq, and recently it is obvious, it's on the record, they tried to derail the nuclear negotiation. They couldn't. So what I can really conclude on the regional level, that all attempts to contain Iran and to marginalize it has been doomed to failure, and Iran is there stronger. So there is a sense of loss regionally, and if you blame Iran for your own mistakes, including Saudi Arabia for the first time in its modern history is a revolutionary, anti-revolutionary, I say. It is meddling, changing regimes, changing borders, and so on and so forth. And I think these are not out of strength. It is based on a regional sense that they have lost to Iran, so they have to blame Iran. And they don't evaluate their own mistakes. On the global level, the third level of analysis, there is an understanding that all this strategic... Finish? I can stop it.
Okay. You can take like 1 minute.
but you didn't use it for my friend.
Yeah,
so.
I did. Same exactly.
And I watched, he talked more than 5 minutes. So be fair to Iranians. We are guests of Arabs here, and I think it is unfair, completely unfair. And I registered, though I'm joking saying so, but if you do so again, I would have stopped. But let me continue. No. Give me 2-3 minutes, you can deduct from my... because it's very important issue. At the global level, there is this assessment that Iran is not behind everything. That terrorism and extremism comes more from Saudi Arabia than Iran. And Daesh and all these groups, who support them? September 11th, who were these people? And I think it is not me. Read Jeffrey Goldberg, just in the recent issue of Atlantic Monthly, Obama Doctrine. On the other side, there is this appreciation that anti-Iranianness as a type of a strategic commodity is useless anymore. It's not it is not sold or bought. It is sold, but it's not bought as it was before. So if you put all this together, you see that Iran is everything. We have to fight Iran. Correct my analysis, but I think I need to learn more. B, regardless of this, we don't have any problem with having this relationship bridged. So I use the concept of bridge. I think there are many components to this bridge, including some of the GCC member states. Look what Qatar did last year, which was excellent, to try having repair, this GCC, Iran and Saudi Arabia. It didn't work. Saudis didn't answer. And I think there are other bridges, at least 3 member states of GCC, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, they can be used. And I think there are other bridges. Finally, my C, coexistence, is a necessity. There is no way that you can, fly from this region and establish yourself in another region. We have to coexist together. And coexistence requires talking to each other, not escalating. So I think talking is the base of coexistence. And we have said we are ready for talk, and we are not for escalation. And this is our Iranian policy, that we are not going to de-escalate whatever they do. Of course, we follow our interests as every nation state does, but I think it's a must that coexistence be the principle of any rapprochement.
Thank you, Dr. Sajadpour. Next, I would like to ask Dr. Khalid Al-Jaber to talk. He's an assistant professor of political communications at the Gulf Studies program at Qatar University. He is also the editor-in-chief of the Peninsula newspaper and works as a principal at the Global Media Consultants and organization in Atlanta, Georgia. And he writes and talks to the media and on political and Arab affairs. He's published extensively in this area. And he has a very recent book that came out that I encourage you to look at the impact of social media in change or in shaping the politics of the region. So, Dr. Khalid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Farij, for this publicity for my book. I think this is a good publicity advertisement for my book. That's nice of you. I prefer to speak Arabic, although I can speak English, but I want to be clear in my message and to make sure that the other speakers might ask questions. Also, I can discuss it with them in Arabic. Let's begin with the beginning. The beginning was in convening this event, which was supposed to be organized several months ago, but there were so many difficulties that led to postponing it. If we count the time period since the time it was supposed to be convened and to now, we found that so many things happened and so many events developed. Many changes took place in the situation. First of all, maybe is this diplomatic rupture between Saudi Arabia and and Iran, after which a number of GCC countries also followed suit, and also some other Arab countries. In fact, the problems about the issue that we are speaking today, which is the relations between the two sides, it's become like a snowball, and day after day it's becoming bigger and bigger. And in fact, within 1 year, we have attended so many conferences and seminars to try to get in touch with each other, to listen to each other. But I must say that to all. We speak about the problems, we talk about crises, but we are unable to adopt solutions, to reach solutions, or any agreements, or any ground floor that brings us together as Arabs and Iranians. Maybe the gentleman, Mr. Jamal, spoke about Saudi Arabia in particular, but I would like to speak about this topic from a larger perspective. A Gulf Arab and Arab perspective. I think the battle that is going on now is a big one. If we go back historically to backwards, we find that the creation of the GCC countries council was as a result of the conflict between Iraq and Iran, and there were some challenges that were imposed upon the GCC countries for several years. Development of the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait, reaching to September 11, 9/11, and the war with Iraq, and then between brackets, the Arab Spring and its consequences. So the region is on quicksand, in fact, and things are going to the worse, not to the better, and we have no other choice but to stop, and each one should hold himself accountable. But how can we hold ourselves accountable? How can we reach hands to the others? The problem with Iran is no longer just with Saudi Arabia. We have a big problem. The GCC countries, the Arab countries, have a big problem with Iran. We were wishing, in fact, for 4 or 5 years, we were wishing that the dialogue will bring us together. And many people had theorized on this, and we went into conferences and seminars, but without any result. Even those who used to call for a dialogue or run away, and in fact they become adversaries and rivals. The problem that was referred to by Obama in his last speech, that it's a 1,000-year conflict. No, I don't think I don't we have a problem of Sunnis and Shi'is. I think that the political agendas that were used in the past year played a big role in this, and the exportation of the principle of exportation of the revolution made things worse, and the concerns were growing, and fear was growing year after year. We saw that in Iraq, then it moved to Lebanon, then to Syria, to reach Yemen. And the problem in Iran is that you don't know who to speak with. In Iran, you don't know who to speak with: the regime, with the religious establishment, with the military establishment, with the academic establishment. You hear a lot of nice words, a lot of communication, but soon you see that this is followed by other statements from the other side that undermines everything that was said previously. So in Iran, there are so many players in the political arena who to sit with and with whom can we make any understandings. This is a problem by itself. Another problem is, I think, 1 minute you have. Okay, I give my minute to my colleague, doctor, then I will continue discussing these scenarios that we can.
Khaled.
And
Thank you, Dr. Khaled, for the commitment strictly to 5 minutes. So we thank you for that. And next, I would like to ask Dr. Nasser Hedian to speak. Dr. Nasser, he is a professor of political science at the University of Tehran. He was the director of the political development program at the Center for Strategic Research and was a visiting professor at Columbia University. He recently authored several articles on the nuclear debate in Iran for contemporary security policies, Political Quarterly, and the research letter of political science. And also something to add about Dr. Nasser, he's been active for a long time on track 2 and dialogue and talking to different parties through informal ways. So this is an opportunity that we have Dr. Nasser with us also to help us understand the possibilities of rapprochement and better improving relations. Thank you. Dr.
Thank
Nasser.
you very much,
5
Ibrahim.
minutes.
I wish to thank you and Qais for inviting me to this forum, and I hope our exchanges can help the rapprochement between our countries, and inshallah it will. What I would like to discuss is basically, because I had a good talk with Jamal before the meeting, and it had impacted the talk which I'm going to give now. Because I believe the misunderstanding between even the elites of our societies are really deep. And we need to work hard to overcome this misunderstanding and misperception. If elite have such a kind of a misperception, that's really unfortunate. And that's difficult to address the issue. Sometimes, the issue is between basically the public of both countries. So expected that they have such a kind of misunderstanding exists between the publics of both countries. But if elite have such a kind of a misconceptions, that's to me, somehow we should blame the elites of both societies, why they have not worked hard enough, at least to have a basic understandings of one another. So I'll try to present then an Iranian view of our activities, our behaviors, basically outside Iran. Of course, I'm talking about in the region. So I would like to begin with our threat perceptions. I mean, as I talk to Jamal, my government, of course, my government's view is not necessarily my view. In fact, my view is different, to be frank with you, but I'm not presenting my view here. I try to say how my government would look at the issue. My government perceive US, Israel, chaos in the region, and world order as a threat. That's the way they would prioritize the threat. On the basis of that threat perception, they have defined their strategic depth and have tried to build infrastructure to deter Israelis and Americans from taking any actions. Maybe their perceptions are wrong, but we cannot blame them why they have that perception unless we provide some evidence to convince them to change their threat perceptions. But every country, and in fact every individual, would act on the basis of their threat perception. So if Iran is in Lebanon, if Iran is in Syria, if Iran is in Iraq, which Iran is in those places, they are there basically in order to deter the Israelis and the Americans. So we believe in Iran, we have two important sources of deterrence. One is our own missiles, which are mostly weapons of terror rather than strategic weapons. Because first of all, they are conventional. Second, they are not precise enough. Thus, they cannot be conceived or perceived as strategic weapons. And the second source of deterrence are Hezbollah's missiles and rockets, which are more significant and important for us than our own. So we have to know, it's good for the Arab elites to know that the value of Hezbollah, Syria, Lebanon, Afghanistan, they're all different from one another for us. Syria has an instrumental value, not inherent value. Lebanon has an inherent value for us. It's good to know, it has a lot of implications, which hopefully In the question and answer part, I would address it if you want. What are the differences for us and what are the implications of each one of these? So we are not in these places to compete with Saudi Arabia. In our threat perception, that's the point which I think we have not done a good job. And also the Arab elites have not, or Saudi Arabian elites have not done a good job. It is important that they know that in our threat perceptions, Saudis are not there. We don't perceive them as a threat. Thus, we have not oriented our foreign policy or military policy in order to contain Saudi Arabia, because we don't perceive them as a threat. But I know that Saudis would perceive us as their number one threat. To that extent, you have to give us the credit that I recognize the Saudis would perceive us as their number one threat. Thus, they have oriented their military and foreign policy in order to contain Iran. So, but I would like to talk a couple of more minutes, if you permit me.
Yes.
Okay. So the point is how we can bridge this gap of misunderstanding to overcome this issue. There are a number of ways which I would address them in the question and answer part, that what can be basically, what can be done. One more issue and I'll stop, okay? And the other issue is the sectarian issue. In fact, I have argued for a long time now that there are two criteria which you can explain our actual foreign policy behavior. And these two criteria are a country or a movement or an organization to be revolutionary. Being revolutionary means among the Iranian decision makers as being anti-Israel or anti-America. That's the meaning of it. That's not my definition. I disagree with it, but that's the definition. And then number two is the movement, the country, the organization to be friend with us, or at least not to be hostile toward us. If you apply these two criteria, you can explain our foreign policy behavior since the revolution. You know, Azerbaijan and Armenia in their fights, we more predominantly sided with Armenia, although Azerbaijan is a Shia country. But because we perceive them as not being revolutionary and being hostile to us, not friendly to us, thus we sided predominantly with the other one. Hugo Chavez and Venezuela, they are Christian, but still we support that one. Hamas is a Sunni organization, but Iran would support Hamas. So it is not being Shia or Sunni, it is rather being revolutionary or not revolutionary on the basis of the definition of the decision makers in Iran.
Thank you.
And to be friend or not friend, you can say why Iran is not supporting Daesh. Daesh is a revolution, Daesh is anti-Israel, anti-America. Why Iran is not supporting Daesh? Because Daesh is hostile to Iran.
Thank
so
you.
I said two criteria, not one.
Thank you, Dr.
Sorry.
Nasser. Thank you. Jamal, what is Saudi Arabia? Saudi Arabia always talks about Iranian intervention, the same that we're talking about now. My question is, to what extent Saudi Arabia is willing to tolerate, like from Iran? What is anything or foreign policy that Iran does in the region, or any relationship builds with the region, would that be considered an intervention? Like, where do you draw the line between a legitimate in the eyes of the Saudi Arabia as a legitimate Iranian foreign policy, or what is considered an intervention? Because we all hear this from Saudi Arabia, that Iran needs to stop intervening or meddling in this areas, but we don't have a definition to what is considered an intervention, and where do you draw the lines?
No, there is a definition, a very clear definition. It is called international laws.
Okay.
International laws of diplomacy, international laws of relations between neighboring countries. An intervention is a hostile action taken against a foreign country or a meddling on the affair of a foreign country.
Yes.
So the definition is what we have, what you know. We are here at a gathering of science. This is the Brookings Institutes. So to say that we are in Syria and Iraq and Lebanon, because we see Israel as a threat, that doesn't go with international laws. Conventionally, the hypothetical question of Israel as a threat to the Iranians contradict with the reality that the Syrian free people who are being bombed and fought by Iranians is very, very contradictory. The threat of Israel to Iran is hypothetical, but the threat of those dirty bombs that falling on the heads of the Syrian people in Aleppo, civilians, is real. So this is the threat we feel in Saudi Arabia. If the Iranians are willing and ready to go and fight our Syrians, people in Syria, then they could end up fighting also in Saudi Arabia one day, and assuming that they are doing that because they see Israel as a threat. It's just an argument that cannot be solved by international laws. My friend, Professor Kazim, said Iran is not behind everything. You are right, Iran is not behind everything, and we need to work together. We are in the most significant time. It is the most serious transformation happening in the Middle East since 1918 with the collapse of the Ottoman Empire. The Middle East is torn apart. We need to work together to fight chaos, to fight extremism. Is Iran helping there? Let's assume that we accepted to have a talk with the Iranians. And let's make a round table in how to approach the situation in Syria. What the Iranians have ideas for Syria, other than sending militias, sectarian militias, that bombing people and killing people under sectarian banners. That illustrates the difference between what Saudi Arabia is doing, that is supporting a Geneva talk that based on UN resolutions, and Iran that is sending militias to kill civilians in Syria.
Thank you. Dr. Sajadpour, there is, here in the region, there is no clear understanding about what does Iran really want. What is the Iranian agenda? What is the Iranian objective, right, in the region? What you hear, or what you hear in the media, that Iran, as also Dr. Nasser said, supporting the revolutionaries, supporting the oppressed, which is, I mean, frequent statements we heard also from Mr. Khamenei. Now, this in the region does not, or cannot be explained by supporting the Assad regime in Syria and Ali Abdullah Saleh and the Houthi alliance in Yemen. So is this still the goal or the objective, supporting the oppressed or supporting the revolutionary? And more importantly, that we would like to hear, because this helps in a better resolution, is to try to understand what is the Iranian agenda, what is the Iranian objectives in the region, so that can people deal with it. Thank you.
It's a very good question, but I'm afraid whatever I say, it would be said that, look, this is one Iranian voice. This is the academic one. It's different from, let's say, the military one. I have two quick points, then I would go to detail. First of all, I think Iranian agenda is clear. It is not a hidden agenda. Iran is for its security and security of its the region surrounding. Our security is linked to the security of the region. We are living in this region. And we know that it is an interlinked security, and it is security of all of us collectively. So you cannot separate. And I think Iranian agenda is clear. It is not a hidden or so on. There are different files with different readings and assessments and analysis. And I think we have to really exchange views and not to go to blame game. The second point, I would say that Iran is a pluralistic society. It has different voices, yes, but it has a state. When the state speaks and acts and commits, it really is committed by its legal obligations and so on and so forth. And the diversity, the pluralism should be understood. So you cannot look at Iran from, let's say, a different country's angle. You have to understand it from its own logic, but it is a state. And when a state is there, it means the pluralism is solved. Look, recent election. We had different elections is very common in Iran, and elections are place where different voices are debating, and finally, when there is a vote for a group of delegation, they are accepted, and there is a civic way. So I think we have to understand. Now, with all this, I think I'm afraid that whatever Iran is saying, whatever pronouncements in the legal international framework, since there are cognitive misperceptions and ideological anti-Iranianism in some quarters here, it would be understood. And I think it may be misinterpreted and misread. Put all this together, Iran is for security of the region, for the prosperity of the region, and for really containing the conflict. The Syrian file, look, here is where I think Saudi Arabia is breaking our international legal frameworks. Because in Saudi Arabia, you have still a political system which is recognized internationally by the United Nations, and it has a representative there. Then now Saudi Arabia is for the overthrow of this government. How you can combine this contradiction that my colleague is offering international law as a base, then you are for the overthrow of a and we know that, we are not elementary students. We know that behind this humanitarian pronouncement, there are strategic directions and tendencies to cut the neck of Iran, as they say in some of the literature. So it is a strategic game to do something against Iran rather than really to concern. I'm sorry, because I'm not talking officially. A country which doesn't have any election and which doesn't have any democratic institution, how it can dare to talk about changing of another political system by force and intervention and supporting terrorist groups like Jabhat al-Nusra? I mean, it is a real contradiction here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You have to thank because
Dr.
it's becoming difficult.
Dr. Khaled, what do you see the role of the Gulf countries here and in terms of promoting better understanding and resolving this?
أنا وضحت في
I explained in my first intervention, and I want to insist on that, especially after what we listened to in the conversation. As I said, there is different discourses coming out of Iran. It makes one wonder, really, who are you meant to believe? The soft talk or the hard talk or the mixture of the two? I think when we speak now about Iran, revolution, etc., we have to we listen to what the Iranian elite is saying, Dr. Nasser and the other gentlemen. They should try and understand how people view their policies outside their country. I have 3 opinion polls. one which involved some 40 countries in the world. 30 countries showed that they view totally negatively to Iran. And the vast majority of these countries are countries surrounding Iran, like Arab and Islamic countries. Secondly, another opinion poll in Wisconsin, an American university, which was also conducted at the level of the Arab world. I think these are important figures that the Iranian elite should take seriously, because we are meant to talk to these people. They are meant to understand us. The opinion poll shows that the real threat which really frightens peoples in the region, not their governments. Number one is Iran. Number two is Daesh. Number three is Israel. Look how the scene has changed. 10 years ago, the situation was totally different. The third opinion poll was conducted by Al Jazeera and published about 1 month ago. 60 to 70% of the Arab and Muslim people desire that a coalition should be established to face the Iranian threat. Isn't this something frightening that people are talk about? They discuss these things. These are why has the perception of the Islamic Republic in Iran moved from defending the mustaz'afin, the oppressed, exporting revolution, to this dire situation? This problem is not being discussed in conferences. We see that the Iranian elite is trying to reverse the discourse and blame the other and defend the Iranian position. I think the ball is in the Iranian court. There is a change. There in the Gulf countries, in the Arab countries, there's real fears of Iranian foreign policies. We do not have a problem with the Shiaism as madhab, as a school of thought. We do not have a problem with the Iranian culture. We like to go to Iranian restaurants and have kebab or Iranian salad and have faluda, and so, but we're talking about the foreign policy. Let us talk about it in a transparent manner. Let us hear clearly to understand and deconstruct. There is an attempt by the elite to defend the Iranian government, the fatwa here and there, the policy. At the same time, the fear is spreading. This area is exploding. We see every day we see a new problem which adds to the problems instead of reaching real stability. I thank Brookings now. They gave us the opportunity to sit down and talk, which means the independent American sentence will not leave us and disappear like the administration has done, especially in view of Obama's latest statements. But we as academic elites and political elites in the region, we have to face up to these challenges, these problems, and sit down and exchange ideas, not defend the policies of the states.
Signed a nuclear.
وقعت
I thank Dr. Khalid again for mentioning the U.S. because the U.S. here is the elephant in the room that we need to talk about. Iran signed a nuclear deal with the U.S. How do you see the U.S. role here? Does the U.S. role have? Does the U.S. have a role in or contributing to hostilities or to rapprochement? To improvement of relations or the cause of conflict or rivalry in the region. Where do you see the role of the U.S. here and how this can contribute to better understanding, especially after Iran signing the nuclear deal with the U.S.?
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say that we are here, Ibrahim, as an elite, and I guess we are not here to repeat the cliche answer or basically to do the polemics. I mean, we are here to find ways, alternative ways, to address important issue for us. I don't think I'm wrestling with you. I'm here to help. I have, come from Tehran. You have come from Saudi Arabia for a long time, not to here to repeat the cliche. And let's see the problem, all of us. This is the way I would say it, is a house in the fire which belongs to all of us. We have to find ways, all of us cooperatively, rather than blaming one another, to contain these flames. What's the use of wrestling here and just basically exchanging cliches and rhetorics? Believe me, I've not come here for that. And I'll try to find alternative ways to address the issue. Answering your question, basically, US, the significance of Middle East in general for US have been reduced. Middle East is being viewed as an area which is significant, less significant, of course, than before, but still with crisis. They are in the mood of crisis management. We shouldn't think in our part of the world that the significance of Middle East is like China. No way. China is a rising power, has a potential to challenge the US in next 25 to 30 years, and it has a lot of resources. It has a surplus that can finance a big army, China. So that's why the US is going to allocate its major resources to the Pacific. But in the region, what they see, I don't see, I'm not one of those who would think that the cause of everything bad in the region is because of the US. No, it is not the case. Yeah, colonialism have been important, no doubt about it. And, their past behaviors have been important, no doubt about it. But many of the problems which we are facing now is independent of US actions. For recognizing that, first of all, it is important to recognize that. And second is, to isolate the problems, to have a good understanding of the problem, and try to address the problem. So each one of them, US has some role, it can contribute positively, or it can contribute negatively. But as someone who have followed US policy for last 37 years very closely, I don't think so. I don't think that at least the Obama administration, or many administrations, they have a bad intention. They have their own interest. They would pursue their interest. That's natural. I don't blame them why they are pursuing their interest. But the point is how we can identify the common interest, support it, and manage the differences of the interest. To me as an analyst, this is the most important issue to address.
Thank you very much. Thank you all. Let's take questions. Doctor? Okay, let's take questions. Yeah. You can speak without the mic.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's not coming. It's here. Don't.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I was preparing
In the name of God,
for the whole speakers, but
No, just one question, please.
only, of course, one question for the first respected speaker. He said that one of the main problems with Iran, he's blaming Iran because they are supporting the dictator Bashar al-Assad. Okay? So I am asking him, I agree with him, I blame Iran for supporting Bashar al-Assad. I asked him, what is your opinion about states who are supporting a dictator in Egypt who is killing and exiling people, and when he is the brink of collapse, they give him the kiss of life.
Let's talk about the subject, the Iran Saudi, please. Okay, Dr. Marwan. Dr. Marwan. Yeah. Say a question.
Thank you very much. In fact, I am Syrian, and I am against the regime of Bashar al-Assad because of the heinous crimes that are being committed by the regime. But on the other hand, I am very much against Israel. So I don't know how can I constitute a threat if I constitute a threat to Iran, because I feel I do, not because I am against Israel, but maybe because I am against the regime of Bashar al-Assad. I want to ask our Iranian colleagues, how many Israelis did Iran kill over the past 37 years? Because I can tell how many Syrians Iran killed over the past 4 or 5 years. My third point, actually, and the final one, is that we are talking about democracy here in Iran. I think we are talking about engineering elections in Iran, because this is what the Expediency Council did last time. In Saudi Arabia, and I'm not defending Saudi Arabia is not claiming to be a democracy, so it doesn't need actually to engineer elections. But we can't actually describe the engineering of election a democracy. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Please bear with me. I know there are so many questions, and that's why I cut on my time, actually, of asking my questions to give the audience time to ask, because I really want to take this opportunity, for you all to hear from them directly. So we'll take rounds. Let's take question from here, and we'll take a number of questions and here, and then go back. Yes, please.
I will speak Arabic. In fact, I have an idea that the conflict, in fact, is not an intellectual one. It is, in fact, a political conflict, but the conflict now on the ground is a military one. And I think there is no solution to the military conflict unless by the balance of power, because the Iranians say, we will reach Israel, and we cannot reach Israel unless we have to be those who appoint the rulers of the Arab countries. And Iran says that there is a void, a security void in the region, and Iran will fill the void. That's why Saudi Arabia and its Arab partners are now filling this void to defend their own territories.
Let's hear from Reem. I'm sorry. Let's take woman voice.
Dr. Sayyid mentioned something about a link between terrorism and Saudi Arabia being responsible for terrorist attacks, and you mentioned 9/11, for example. I think it's inaccurate to blame a country on terrorist attacks, because Saudi Arabia itself suffered from terrorist attacks since Juhayman and 1970s, the Grand Mosque siege, all the way until this year, with ISIS, and ISIS affiliates and sympathizers initiating attacks against Saudi Arabia. So how do you explain that Saudi Arabia is responsible for terrorist attacks where Saudi Arabia is suffering from terrorist attacks?
Thank you. Okay, take question from here. Yes, go ahead.
في اعتقادي الشخصي ان المشكله مع
The problem with Iran is not Saudi Arabia only, but with all the GCC countries, just as was said by Khalid Jabir. The problem is not with Saudi Arabia only, but Iran must stop this war by proxy in the Arab world and the different Arab countries, such as in Iraq or Lebanon or Syria, Yemen. Also, this creates a general atmosphere for dialogue. I mean, whatever you speak about dialogue, we cannot do a war by proxy. This is something against any dialogue. My question to the Iranian gentleman: what point of view of the political elite in Iran about the Iranian decision maker, and how do they help them to have a good dialogue with the GCC countries? Of God, the most merciful, the most compassionate. My question is to Mr. Khashoggi. In fact, I wanted to know where the initiative, the good initiative that was taken by His Highness the Emir of Qatar for cooperation between GCC countries and Iran, knowing that that Saudi Arabia did not accept this initiative so far, but Iran welcomed the initiative. Doesn't this mean that this was a good opportunity now to have such a dialogue between the two governments and to stop this blame game.
Take a question here and then give the speakers time to talk.
Thank you, sir.
Shukran.
The speaker seems to have admitted to the value and importance of the U.S. role in the region, and starting from Mr. Khashoggi when he spoke about how the U.S. handed Iraq to Iran on a silver platter, to Dr. Nasser here, and who says that the U.S. is pursuing its own interests in the region. Can't you all see that if the entire region is actually being played by the U.S., and if we look at the current conflict between Iran and Saudi Arabia in particular, or the other Gulf states, or the rest of the Sunni Muslim world, as the U.S. has planted the seeds of division within the Muslim world into this sort of problem, and it started from there and it's growing, that then we can actually work together to try and counter that from a Muslim point of view, rather than a Shia, Sunni, or because we all read the Quran. And at the end of the day, they read something else. But they have done this, and they are successful in doing this. The division, the seeds are actually working. And now they are moved to the Pacific, and they let you play or fight each other, and just to stall any progress, any development in the region. Can't you take it from this angle, that the U.S. is actually taking this to their advantage? Thank you very much.
We'll take another round, but let's hear from the speakers. We'll take another round. Jamal.
I want to speak about the notion of dialogue, because our friends Nasir and Sajid always repeatedly talk about how we should work together in bringing peace and stability to the region. Iran's understanding of dialogue is to dialogue with us while they continue in what they are doing in Syria and in Yemen, which is militarily. It's not dialogue. The Iranians are not in dialogue in Syria, are not in dialogue in Yemen. If they were allowed, if it wasn't for the Saudi resolve, Yemen will be flooded with Iranians' weapons. This is their form of dialogue. So Saudi Arabia had to take the initiative independently of the United States. If Saudi Arabia waited for Obama, maybe Mr. Qasem Soleimani will be inaugurating the first naval base in Hudaydah today. But Saudi Arabia took initiative in its own hand, changed rule of the games in Yemen. Yemen now is about to approach stability and to resume a political process. Let's look where Saudi Arabia stands in Yemen and Syria, and where Iran stands. Saudi Arabia stands in Yemen and in Syria with the forces who seek democracy, who seek political transformation through dialogue, through diversity, while Iran in both countries stand with sectarians, militias, with dictators in both countries, Ali Abdullah Saleh in Yemen, Bashar al-Assad in Syria. It is not Saudi Arabia, Professor Sayed Poor, who initiated the revolution in Syria. It is not Saudi Arabia who wanted to change the regime. Saudi Arabia patiently waited for Bashar al-Assad to inject reform into Syria for 6 months before it made it public that it is asking for its removal. When Iran, from day one, they were supportive of Bashar al-Assad. So it is not Saudi Arabia alone. Most of the free world is standing with Saudi Arabia, because we are standing with the Syrian people, who about 10 million of them have left their country. So we should not speak about a legitimate government in Syria. Only Iran sees a dictator like Bashar al-Assad as a legitimate government. Yes, he is in the United Nations. But who would dare today in Europe pay him a visit except an irrelevant parliamentarian? Bashar al-Assad is no good news to anybody. So that's, if you want dialogue, let's apply the rules of international laws. So we can work out the differences in Syria and in Yemen. But of course, again, Iran is not doing that. It prefers to side militarily, not through dialogue in both countries.
Thank you. Dr. Sajid.
I'm afraid we are not following what you said in your letter of invitation, that we have to refrain from blame game, but we are getting to blame game. Iran is behind everything. Iran is not
It cannot be behind it.
Iran is Syrian crisis, whatever. Yemen is Iran, Syria is Iran. I think let's be frank. We are going to live in this region. You are going to live. And we have to live together. There is no other option. And we cannot exclude each other. There cannot be a zero-sum game. Iran is not going to be deleted, and the Arab states are not going to be deleted. So what we need is, as I said, assessment, understanding, exchange of views, and let's be more frank. Let's understand what we say, and I also recommend to ourselves, let's understand what you say. I really try to understand. I try really to bridge the gap. But I think I'm not understood well. Why? Because there are so many misperceptions accumulated. My colleagues refer to the polls which reflect Iran as enemy. Who are making this? Who are responsible? I think there is a tendency to depict Iran as the main threat, while it is not. It is an artificial threat. It is really not endangering any interest in the Arab world. You refer to Saudi Arabia. I have sympathy with all those who are victims of terrorism, including Saudis, Arabs, Afghanis, Iraqis, and the others. But let's be clear. I didn't blame Saudi Arabia. What I said was that today, in international, in free world, as Jamal is saying, there is a high discussion, a tense discussion, that the threat of Iran is not marketable anymore. Don't forget that Saudi's GCC member states during the last 3 decades were using this card that Iran is the threat. Now the Americans are coming, and I'm not defending American position, but I read what they say. In this article that I mentioned, Obama Doctrine, Goldberg is saying that Obama is not buying these arguments anymore. Why? Because they see that those people who were committing these suicide attacks on September 11th, they
want to come
always stop Iranians. Yes.
Okay.
Stop. Stop.
Can just in the
But
second round.
Iran
second
cannot
round.
be stopped.
But
Iran
it
is
is
a part of
important
it.
about the Goldberg. It is not only.
Always stop Iranian, but we are here.
It is not only.
Look, you have invited us.
Okay.
We have
In the
come for
second
only long
round, in the
distance
second
now.
round, please. Yeah, we'll take a second
We are
round.
your guests,
Dr. Khaled.
We know
Dr. Khaled.
Arabs are really hospitable people.
Okay.
You invite us and then you stop us.
No. Well, you took more than enough
Yeah.
more time than Jamal. Dr. Khaled. Well, you can comment in the second round. Dr. Khaled.
بشكل سريع.
Briefly, I think through more than 50 years, we have lost a lot of possibilities of development because of our fight or battle with Israel. Development plans were postponed. Democracy was frozen in many Arab countries until we reached the situation that even after changing the dictatorships, we were not able to have a system or regime that is based on the modern state concept. And I'm afraid that we lose the coming years also in the conflict between Arabs and Iran, and this will take from us several more years of dismantlement and other things. And while we see that there are so many leakages saying that Syria will be divided, Iraq is no longer the way it is, Yemen will be divided, and as if we have reached a new cycus pico. What was said by Dr. Sayed that you put all the blame on Iran, and let's share the blood responsibility. Yes, I admit, yes, we are guilty in some things, but let us discuss our problems and differences. Let's sit together, Mr. Sayed, and put our differences on a paper, and then we agree upon them. First, Let's condemn all interventions in GCC countries such as in Yemen, Bahrain, and let's reach an understanding about the three isles of the Emirates, which is a cause of conflict with the Emirates for 30 years. Let's stop sectarianism in Iraq and in Syria. Let's reach some understanding and speak about the future, about democracy, about development, about future projects. Let's invest in this side that we think is that in the government side of Tehran, there's a lot of investment by the government in sectarism. Nobody believes that Iran is still wanting to export the revolution. This is something not convincing. This is something no longer convincing. And the elite of Iran must understand this. And this is what we wish when we speak with you. We don't want you to say, yeah, this is a political government point of view. This is what the government thinks. No. Then why are we here if we are here to reach some understanding and the common ground between us all?
First of all, regarding the use, Jamal, the use, of international law, to me, is very much polemical. You know, you are invading another country. You said, okay, that's legitimate because
country?
Yemen.
We're not invading Yemen.
Yemen. What?
We are not invading Yemen.
So, but everyone, yeah, but everyone else think you have invaded Yemen. But to me, that is, use of, you said, okay, because we have been invaded, by the government, Israeli government, so you are there. You have done the same thing in Bahrain. Why? Because Bahraini government is a legitimate government, they have invaded you. But you don't give us the same privilege that, okay, Assad has invaded Iran to go there, or Iraqi government has given us, has asked us to go there. My point is, we are not going to get anywhere with such a kind of exchanges. Let's put this polemics aside. We don't want to wrestle. We are not going to compete. Let's go for the solution. You know, we can, to the morning, I guarantee, we can provide all sorts of reasons for one another to engage in such a kind of polemics. I don't want to get into this polemics. Let me address the real issues and my solutions, which I think it's good for that. First of all, I take Khalid's point about the public opinion polls. I guess that's a very good one. We have to take it seriously. Such a thing exists, and we have to take care of it. Thank you for that. You know, that's a very good point. And you can be sure, personally, I'm going to engage in it. I'm going to discuss it in Iran, in the policy circles, and also in the public. Okay, such a perception exists among the Arab countries, and we have to deal with it. That's real. Okay. Number one. Number two, dialogue with the GCC. That's good. That should be done. In fact, we have a different relationship. We have a very good relationship with Oman. We have a very workable relationship with Kuwait and Qatar. And we have a lot of problem, of course, with the UAE, but thanks God, practically, realistically, we have the most relationship with Dubai. There are, if I'm not mistaken, there is 20 flights a day to Dubai from Tehran, which is hardly we have such a kind of a flight to any other city in Iran. Okay, so but the point is that the point is good. We have to work on it. With each one of them, we have to push much harder and to work with them. And also regarding the Syria, very quickly, I'm afraid that, this is like engaging in a debate which I have with my friends in Iran, with many of my colleagues, friends, and some of the public, that, they think America is behind everything. That's a conspiracy theory. And the positive thing about conspiracy theories are, it provides very simple answers for very complex questions, satisfy the mind. If you think Iran is not anti-Israel, I'm afraid I cannot help you that much. It is so obvious that it is difficult to argue that Iran is against Israel. If you look at the history, how much cost Iran has paid for that antagonism, you can easily understand it. So if so far you have not been able to do it, I'm afraid I cannot help it that much. My last point about this gentleman about America. I disagree with you. I don't think, yes, America has been involved in the region. Yes, some of the things which has happened is because of the America, but I'm not from the view that blame America for everything. You know, we have our own problems. Many of them are independent of America. We have to address it. So again, I see a sort of a conspiracy there, you know, America is behind it.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser. Let's take the second round, please. Okay.
Mr. Nasser, on the same point of American involvement, how you say that in the presence of the Palestinian conflict and the open love affair of America with Israel and the presence of the American heavy military in almost every corner in the area, how we can say that America doesn't have the interest in this region?
Thank you. Sir? Yes.
شكرا لكم دكتور عمر العجلي مركز.
Thank you very much, Dr. Omar Al-Ajli. I am here to convey an impression from social networks and the kind of discussion that is prevalent amongst the Arab League, which goes to say that American policy makers have way gone beyond dialogue with the West. They are happy with their relations with the West, and they are happy to squeeze the Arabs under the banner of terrorism, and Iran is no longer worried about the sanctions. This period of history is over.
I have a short comment and a question. And the comment is that, you know, everything said, I read that. So there's nothing new. And actually I came here just to listen what should be done to get the both parties, you know, understand each other. I mean, everyone, and I agree with Nasser, I met him in Turkey once, he's a great speaker, but when you talked about, you're not here for the blame game, but you're doing this as well. I mean, so what is it exactly that should be done to get both nations, let's say the Saudis as a main nation and the Iranians? I'm not finished. Yeah. And this is, second thing is that I don't think that Iran is in a position to lecture about democracy. I mean, Iran is supporting a butcher in Damascus. So what is it that democratic deficient, as if Iran is a full-fledged democracy? I mean, this is kind of irony here. You know, we can't say that. And my question to Khalid Al-Jaber, دكتور خالد, يعني صحيح أنا معك.
Agree with you that it all depends on whom you talk to in Iran. By the same token, the Arabs approach Iran differently. There is no unified front by the Arabs against Iran.
Voice, please. Yes.
My question is for four of you. Do you think that the escalation of hostilities between Iran and Saudi Arabia would have reached such a point if Iran hasn't signed the nuclear deal and Saudi Arabia feeling scared of losing an ally, which is the US, in favor of Iran, which is no longer isolated by the international community? Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just 2 points, Professor Said. You mentioned certain elements that you said that it reflects Saudi Arabia foreign policy, which are internal issues in Saudi Arabia, such as democratic deficiency, modernization, generation king, the fight within the political elite. Don't you think those issues also apply to Iran? And the issue of Iranian-Saudi Arabia relation is also a reflection of the domestic politics. The second point related to Dr. Khashoggi, don't you think the rapprochement between Iran and United States of America reflects the failure also of Saudi Arabia to address those internal issues such as generation
Thank you. Thank you. Let's take a question here, please. Yes.
First of all, let me thank you for coming here. I just have one particular question to Mr. Nasser Hadian and Mr. Khalid Jabr and all in general. But my particular question is, you talk about the elite, and Mr. Khalid Jabr talk about the academic elite as well. What about the youth? I mean, the civil societies, and do you think they can contribute to the rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Iran? And if yes, what Iran and Saudi Arabia have taken measures to sustain that approach? Because we don't hear any use or any what we call media or any comments from the youth elements, only from the elites. And you talk about the elite. And my question to Mr. Khalid Jabr, last question, he wrote a book about the affection of social media in changing politics. I want to ask Mr. Khalid, عندي بالعربي معلش, هل أنت على صلة مع الشباب اليوم؟
What do you think about the youth today? Okay, we understood your question.
We'll have another event for the Khalid's book.
I like the question, what should be done? What should be done that Iran should leave militarily the region, go back to Iran, but leave, no more militias, no more warfare in Syria and Yemen. The problem that it's not only the Iranians who got their role in the region wrong, it is also Mr. Obama's did. When Obama to Goldberg said that the Saudi and the Iranians must learn how to share influence or a cold peace, he put it this way, that is very imperialistic. This is like we, the Saudis and the Iranians, sitting across a table and dividing influence in the region with no respect to the Syrians or to the Yemenis. Often people use the term Iran's legitimate interest in Syria. There is no such a thing as legitimate interest in Syria for the Iranians nor for the Saudis. There is only interest for the Syrian people. They are the ones who decide. We cannot dictate what the Syrians choose for themselves. It is very much insulting to bring this Yalta mentality in the age of the Arab Spring. And we, the Saudis and the Iranians, share influence. Our role, the Saudis, should be to help the Syrians, to help the Yemenis reach their aspiration of freedom, but not to dictate on them whom to choose or to side with the dictators in any country in the region. We should carry on that mission. That's the opportunity that our Iranian friends are losing, and they are making things more difficult. Nobody is going to gain and come victorious by spreading more chaos. I'm sure the Saudi will be able to at least make it difficult for the Iranians to achieve a win in Syria. Maybe we will not force them out, but there is no way they're going to be allowed to re-establish the region of terror of Bashar al-Assad. It's not going to happen. The most they could do, which will be very damaging for Syria, is to partition Syria. And that will not be for sure accepted by Saudi Arabia or Turkey. It will be rebutted for some time. It's bad news for the Syrians, but we should listen to we the Saudis, you the Iranians, listen to the people of the region. We should not listen to ourselves.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Yes, Dr.
I think there were good questions. What should be done? I started by this. And I said, first, we have to exchange our understanding and analysis. So first, there is a cognitive gap. We have to understand how we understand Syria, how we understand it. We have to understand difficulties, challenges of the region. And I think the problem mostly starts with understanding, cognitive exchanges, and so on. So what should be done? We have to bridge gaps on this level. Second, I said there are bridges that should be used. I mentioned Qatar's initiative. I mentioned others. So we need to bridge. Finally, I thought coexistence should be the base. We are doomed to live together. This is a reality. Whether you like me or you don't like me, or whether I like you or I don't like you. We have to understand that there is a common destiny here. And it is not just a slogan or a rhetoric, it is the daily reality of life. Now, on the question of Iran has its own social problem. Iran has its own challenges also, social, economic, nobody ignores. But there are 2 points in response to your question. First, we don't blame Saudi Arabia, and we don't use Saudi Arabia as a pretext that Saudi Arabia is behind every problem. Actually, we don't care. If you read when the question was elites, we don't much care about the details of what's going on here and there, because we are so engaged with our own problems. The second point is, believe it or not, whether it is an engineered, as the Syrian colleague was saying, which I don't agree, whether it is Iran is lecturing the other. I think Iran is not lecturing the other. The second point is that in Iran we have debate. There is a transparent debate on all social issues, all economic issues. And we find ways in different ways. And I think this social debating, economic debating, is very tough and very challenging, but we discuss it. My third point or question, if I'm not stopped.
You can say the third point.
The third point
you
is...
You always take more time than others and complain. Say the third point.
We are people of dialogue and negotiation. We are not for fighting. Now, I think there was a very good question on this nuclear deal and the increasing of tensions after this, and there were some references to U.S. and the West and Iran. I think, first of all, Iran is internationally accepted. It's not just the U.S.
The third point, not first of all, please.
First point is about U.S. and international issues and the nuclear issue. But this third point has 3 points. First is that Iran is accepted globally. Second is that I'm afraid that what we hear from Saudis is really shocking. Were they for more confrontation between Iran and the United States?
Thank you very much.
And the third point is that they failed.
Thank you very much. Dr. Khaled.
I too want to focus on the future. After the nuclear deal, there were different scenarios. In fact, we were hoping, we were maybe rather ambitious that Iran will engage in the international game. They will commit to international agreements. They played that game with Europe and the West. Why don't they play the same game with their neighbors, the Arabs and the Gulf people? This was the first scenario. The second scenario, and in fact this is what we saw in reality, was contrary to our ambitions. The antagonism has increased. Maybe Syria has exposed a lot of real Iranian policy. Maybe Iraq did not expose them strongly enough because it was covered by statements and rhetoric. But Syria was the real shocker, especially Hezbollah, who established a long reputation, always saying that we are a resistance movement, we are fighting the enemy. All of this was destroyed when it was used as a proxy in the war. And a brother asked about the Arab world not having a unified front. I think our intentions are honest, and in 2005 when Iran reached out to the Arab world, there were exchange visits, there were cultural, commercial delegations exchanging visits. The Arab and the GCC countries have no problems with that. There was meetings with Khomeini, but when Ahmadinejad came back, it was another setback. We must remember that GCC countries do not export revolution. We do not support Sunni groups inside Iran. We do not support Sunni groups against other groups. We do not have an antagonistic discourse which is always being used in international forums. this is not present in our side. On the contrary, we see the opposite on the other side. Dr. Said talked about laying bridges. We want bridges from yesterday, but not according to Iran's conditions. It should be conditions of everyone. We have issues in Iraq, in the UAE, in Bahrain. They say Iraq is our share, finished. So what conditions should we enter into any dialogue to reach an agreement which can be of benefit to everyone?
Okay. First of all, I did not say America is basically doesn't have any interest here. Of course, America has interest here, but the significance of the region has been reduced for America. That's what I said, and that's my belief. And I think we should not think that we are the center of the world. In Middle East in general, because there are many people in Iran who think that Iran is the center of the world. We are not. There are far more important countries in the world who have taken Americans' attention. That's the same thing in the region. We should not overvalue the significance of the Middle East. Basically, that was what I was telling. Not they don't have interest, or Middle East is not important. Point number two, in fact, I tried to begin to address the question, but unfortunately the Forum Ibrahim is in a way, you do not give us enough time to go to what should be done. I have a proposal basically at three different levels.
Can I interrupt? I'll give it back to you, but can I interrupt? Because I'm going to end the questions from the audience, and that's actually my question, my ending question to everyone that would like now to move on from what is happening from the past, and would like to ask all of you to please outline in bullet points. Tell me in terms of a future perspective. And again, please don't talk abstract that we need to understand each other and we need to coexist. And we know that. Right? Tell me. That's why we're here. Okay. I would like to hear from you, and I thank Dr. Nasser again for getting this thinking. Before I ask a question, tell me in bullet points what would you like to see happening in terms of a future perspective from the other side, especially in order to move rapprochement forward and better understanding and de-escalation, not escalation, please. Dr. Nasser.
Thank you very much. First of all, I agree with Kazem that misunderstanding is the key. Particularly, I came to this conclusion after talking to Jamal. I think that the key is we have to remove this misunderstanding. But for doing that, to be very, like you said, bullet point, I think we need more exchanges of scholars,
one,
elite,
two,
and youth, basically, as you said. There need to be more exchanges, particularly among the youth, being even more concrete. At Tehran University, we are very glad to invite our colleagues from Saudi Arabia and students from Saudi Arabia to come there for a semester. To have these kind of exchanges can lead to reducing the misunderstanding. Two, we need to work on the public. For working on the public, thanks God, Jamal is going to have a good, a news agency. So we can use his news agency to exchange views which is directed to the public. Bring, with a good language, trying to work to remove these misunderstandings which exist. We have to do the same thing in Iran. Number three, we can have, in fact, a joint project between Doha Institute can be good base, inviting some Iranians, some Saudis, let them concentrate and work in for instance, the threat perceptions among both countries. That can be extremely important. So a joint research project can be very influential and important. Then there is at the official, so we have at the official level, we have to try, work hard to convince our officials to get in touch with one another, to talk one another. And as Jamal said, we are, at least for the Mecca, we have already begun that. Let's hope it can be enhanced to other levels. So that's the official level. Then at the elite, at the think tank level, we have to increase the exchanges. I'm sure Kazem, basically from his institute, IPIS, and also the center or the bureau that he's directing, there can be important exchanges at that basically at that level, and also at the think tank level in Iran and in Saudi Arabia. And the third level is the public level. So for the public level, as I mentioned, news media, the television, writing joint articles, writing op-eds, for instance. That would be good if Jamal or Khaled write op-ed, and we can publish it in Iranian newspaper as an op-ed front page. That's a view from Saudi Arabia, and we do the same thing. I write an op-ed, so
in the peninsula. In the peninsula,
in the peninsula, or in Saudi Arabia, for the public. This is not for the officials.
Okay.
This is rather being written for the public.
Thank you, Dr. Nasser. Again, please, yes, Jamal, more on bullet points. What would you like to see happening?
Okay, first
of future. Yeah.
First of all, I like what Nasser said, but it will not help much. It will make us understand each other better. But actually, the Saudi Arabia and Iran don't have much of differences.
Good.
Saudi Arabia does not have territorial differences with Iran. Nor Saudi Arabia is concerned with the way the Iranians choose to rule their own country and what kind of an Islamic revolution they have. It all matters to Iranian expansionism in the region. That is a problem. If we and the Iranians sit together, and the Iranians convince Saudi Arabia of their so-called legitimate interest or right in Syria, and we accepted that legitimate right in Syria, what about the Syrians themselves? What if the Syrian people refuse that legitimate rights? Because there is no such a thing as legitimate rights for Iran in Syria or for Saudi Arabia in Syria. The rights only belong to the Syrian people. They are the ones who will decide. So it will be just a waste of time for us to debate Iranian interventionist policy to convince us of the good reasoning, whatever, if there is a good reason for their intervention in Syria or in Lebanon, or if and why it is so important for Iran to send more weapons to Hezbollah, and why it is more important for Saudi Arabia to lift its blockade on Yemeni ports so the Iranians will resume sending more weapons to the Houthi. Even if we accepted that, it will be unfair for the Yemeni people and for the Syrian people and for the Lebanese people. What matters is that Iran must be obliged by international laws which prohibit them from intervening and sending weapons and hiring politicians and militias in foreign countries.
Thank you, Jamal. Dr. Rabur. Future bullet points, what needs to happen?
I'm afraid if I have bullet points, you would say it's abstract. But I think I have three. And you don't have any at all. Now, I have three more on what should not be done and 3 points on what should be done. If I have time, I'll go to details. But first, and they are in, let's say, poetic way, 3 Ds. First, de-emotionalization of relationship. Tonight, I noticed there are too much emotion in this relationship.
Yes.
Second, I think we have to de-escalate the tensions. Let's find ways to de-escalate, not increase it. Third, I think we have to deconstruct our cognitive system. And I'm talking about my own self also. Deconstruction is the key. You cannot stand by cliché, by repeating what you have been exposed to. Now, on the positive side, 3 E's. First, I think we have to focus on extremism. Extremism is the common threat. We have to have a joint definition, joint apparatus, and I think it is really a major security threat for everybody. My second E is economy. Let's take economy more serious. And I think there are areas of economic interactions. Actually, it was not Iran which was inattentive to the Arab world. Of course, we have been always interested in the Arab wars, but I think the response of some of the Arab actors, I don't talk about Arab states together, to nuclear deal was not very hopeful, but I think still there are economic spaces which can really be built. My third positive note is environment. And I think environment is a place free of many politicized areas. And if I'm allowed, I go just because there were so many references to Syria. I would say Syria cannot be a problem dividing us. Why? I have an example. Turkish position in Syria is absolutely different from ours. And it is on the record. But still, we have good relationship with Turkey. So it means coexistence applies here. You can disagree on even some major issues, but still live together. And I think coexistence is very key.
Thank you.
And can I thank you for listening?
Okay.
You know, I have two lectures prepared. One is a short one, the other one is a long one. The long one is thank you very much. The short one is thank you.
Thank you. دكتور خالد.
يعني أنا بالنسبة لجانبي أتمنى أن تكون متفائل.
I hope to be an optimist. I was optimist, but after the Arab Spring, I'm no longer that optimistic. The fears I harbor is that the current government in Iran they are chess players. They are long-term. Iranians are very clever in playing chess, and this is what distinguishes them. They have a hard stomach. They can deal with kebabs and other things. So therefore, they think the Gulf area is an easy bite to swallow. They can take it, swallow it, and carry on. But there are some determinants, nonetheless, that we can build on, even with a little bit of optimism. I think political realism, especially in the short period to come, will determine our relations with Iran as Gulf countries and Iran, specifically what happens in Syria, where if Bashar goes or Bashar stays, if the situation changes or not, this will rearrange this area. Historically, there was some sort of a convergence, and we talked about mid-90s till 2005. There was stability, there was development in the relationships until something came. So there are historical witnesses to this. I think solving these outstanding issues with the Gulf countries and other countries in the region will contribute positively to a more positive relations with Iran. But the ball is in Iran's court. And I think, for example, they should stop really this campaign of the governments and states. Now nobody buys that. Everybody understands the situation now. The Arab Spring and Iran had one discourse until Syria came. It exposed their real intentions. And also, in my personal opinion, we understand that there is a youth in Iran which is pragmatic and politicized and ideologicized, which wants openness with the world. I think in the years to come, I hope we don't have to long for a long time, this youth generation will be a strong player in both Iran's internal and external policies. We saw them in 2009, and the Twitter revolution is testimony to that. I hope that we end up being more optimistic, not pessimistic.
Want to give more? Okay. All right. Go ahead.
First of all, regarding Khalid's last point, no doubt. I mean, we have a lot of problem in Iran, and I guess we have to recognize that. You know, we have problem with the human rights. We have problem with democracy. We have problem with the political freedom. We have to address it. If we don't recognize it as a problem, we are not going to address it. We are not going to try to find a solution for it. But I hope all of us as the elite of our societies recognize these things, these problems in our own country. You know, if I blame everything to the Arabs or to the Americans or to the Israelis, or you blame us and the Americans, you know, for every problem we have, believe me, we are not in the right direction. We are better, all of us are better off to know that we have problem with these issues. We have the problem with the women's issue, period. If we don't recognize it, we are not going to address it. We have problem in Iran. You have problem in many parts of the Middle East. Thus, we have to address them. We no longer can say that, okay, things are good. We don't need to address them. It's just a matter of time. We have to address it. And my last one in regard to the in defense of Obama. Jamal, Obama never said that, you know, Saudis and Iranians sit together and divide the region, so forth and so on. You know that he didn't say that. What he said that, okay, many of the problems is because of the rivalry between Iran and Saudi Arabia. It's better for you two countries sit together and address these problems. Not about recommendation. It doesn't mean that if someone like Obama has said something, so it should be deceptive or wrong. I don't think it is. I mean, unless you want to do a polemic, and again using the international law or whatever. I think his recommendation is good, and I guess, I mean, if our countries get together, they can address some of the important issues of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being with us. And to end this peacefully gives us hope for coexistence and for better understanding and rapprochement in the future. So thank you for our great speakers and for discussing with us. And thank you all. And we have a reception here. Please help yourself. Thank you.